It's 10 times the terror.
Hello and welcome to 10 Times the Terror. No, I'm not.
Not okay.
Hello, and welcome to 10 Times the Terror. I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And on today's episode, Dad, we might need a bigger boat because we're talking about Jaws, a movie you may have heard of by a certain director named Steven Spielberg. The reason why we're discussing it now is because we both got the fortunateness to go see the movie in IMAX this past Labor Day. It came back to theaters for IMAX, which was exciting to go see. It's also slightly disheartening because maybe it suggests that there aren't enough new movies to come out, but that's a whole other discussion we will not get into right now. We're talking about Jaws. It's a classic. We figure this is as good a time as any to talk about it. So I figure, we can kind of maybe just go kind of broadly into the movie and talk about our personal histories with the movie, our overall thoughts on the movie. We will be talking about the movie in depth. If you haven't seen Jaws, how dare you, for starters? But no, if you haven't seen it should be available anywhere. It might even still be in theaters. Definitely is worth seeing on the big screen if you get that chance. But so, Dad, I want to obviously you were alive when this movie came out, but before we kind of go into this sort of personal history of the movie, I just want to read a couple of sort of fun facts about the movie and sort of like kind of talk about its overall legacy. So obviously, yeah, this is directed by Steven Spielberg. It's based on the novel by Peter Benchley, who actually co-wrote the screenplay. And one thing I didn't realize is that so the movie came out on June 20th, 1975, but it was actually supposed to come out the Christmas before. It was supposed to have a holiday release in 1974, but got delayed due to, I guess, scheduling reasons. But I didn't know this by the time. Apparently, the reason for that is because summer was considered like a bad time to release movies. That was like the dumping ground. That's when like nobody went to the movies because they all were on vacation. That obviously changed with this movie, and I think that's maybe one of many kind of happy accidents that happened with this movie. Another one being the shark that was referred to as Bruce, being this mechanical shark that ended up not working, but that sort of played a part into being kind of not seen as much throughout the movie, which I think adds to the overall suspense of the movie. But this was, in many ways, the original summer blockbuster. It was the highest grossing film at the time. And I don't know if you knew this, Dad, but in 2001, it was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. But yeah, so I want to head over to you, Dad. What was your relationship to this movie? Like, what was it like when you first saw it? What was the sort of cultural reception as you remember it?
Well, I would challenge, first of all, the idea that summer movies were not a big deal. It was sort of a dumping ground. All kinds of great movies, I recall, came out in the summer. Psycho came out in the summer. North by Northwest came out in the summer. There's a bunch of others that you could mention. So I would dispute the idea that summer was kind of regarded as a throwaway for movies. I think in many cases, well before Jaws, major movies had come out in the summer, and I think even Vertigo came out in the summer.
Yeah, but Dad, for every Psycho or North by Northwest, there was Ghost in the Invisible Bikini and all those beach movies. So I assume that's what they're referring to.
Yeah, but I wouldn't think that I would think that there was an intention to bring out major movies in the summer, and the idea that people have more free time. I can remember, and as a college kid, being down the Jersey Shore. We went to the movies every night, and some were better than others, but I think carnal knowledge. I could go on, but there was really. So I think that's a misnomer to think that summer was not a time for movies. But that's, I guess, beside the point. I think Jaws was a major blockbuster in the summer, but I wouldn't say that a film like North by Northwest is not a blockbuster either. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only just reading kind of the trivia on the movie. I can't speak to whether or not the summer was big, but I can imagine that this movie started the summer movie season as we know it. So that's not to say that there weren't good movies released in the summer, but as the summer movie season, where every single week you have a big release, that's what I assume they're referring to.
Yeah, I think the idea that the idea of a summer blockbuster. I think these others
And
were
that
major movies, but the idea of because otherwise you're talking about beach blanket bingo and as summer movies.
Yeah, it sounds like because this movie had a $9 million budget, but it was the first movie ever to gross $100 million domestically, which means like everybody went to see this movie, and I think that's what they're sort of trying to like signify. This is the movie that everybody went to go see, so it
Yeah,
was a
I
huge
think
deal.
too. Going back and thinking about it again, I saw it because um, I was visiting to the United States from living in Costa Rica, and I did a lot of these visits regarding relationship between the seminary I taught at in Costa Rica and other church groups in America. So in the United States. All it is to say is that I would make periodic visits, and I sure what I would say another big factor of Jaws is the marketing. I think if you go back and do a study, I think they put a huge amount of money and effort into promoting the film, which helped create the whole blockbuster idea. Everybody needs to see this movie idea. But I think that's another piece of this that it was a tremendous job of marketing, publicity.
Yeah, it sounds like between like TV advertisements, merchandising, and also just going off the success of the novel. The novel was a New York Times bestseller, so clearly I think all of that generated this sort of buzz for this movie.
Yeah, I remember, my thinking back in the period, I definitely wanted to see it because number one, it adds to the great monster movie tradition, and but I'd heard so much about it, and I think that was whoever was in charge of the marketing and publicity did a great job. I mean, it's North by Northwest would be promoted, and so would some of the others here. But this was an all-out effort, all hands on deck to say, you've got to see this movie, and those opening musical chords, they were on radio, they were on television. Every time everybody turned around, you'd hear that bum bum bum. I'm not going to try to do it; it won't work, But you'd heard those opening chords of the shark. So people were really exposed to the whole idea of the film, and I think that's brought in such a big respect. And then the movie was very good. So bottom line there, it's like
Well, and not only
you can
that,
only do so much with promotion. You've got to have a product that's going to stand up to the scrutiny of the audience.
but not only that, but according to this, when it first was released on June 20th, it opened across 464 screens, which it said at the time was the biggest opening, if you will, in terms of number of theaters of any movie in the not just the country but the continent. Because even like you mentioned, you mentioned Psycho. Sorry, Psycho had an early release in June, but it was limited only to the big cities. It didn't get a wide release until September. So I think that's the sort of difference between like a summer release versus like everyone goes to see it at the same time.
When did The Godfather come out? That was 1972, but what time of year was I can remember seeing The Godfather down the shore. Would have been the summer.
The Godfather came out on March 24th, 1972.
Okay, so it was
So really, these are not. I wouldn't call these summer releases. Like they might still be in
no,
theaters, but for Jaws to come out June 20th, that is the middle of summer. That is
right.
when everyone.
While you're well into the start of summer, and you're like the film itself, you're on the eve of the 4th of July.
But I do think it's just interesting that it was supposed to come out at Christmas, because again, this is such a summer, themed movie.
Sure.
It was supposed to come out on Christmas because I guess that's just generally when the highest movies kind of the year would come out. But obviously, with this movie launching not just the blockbuster, it launches the whole summer movie season, where now every year the biggest movies come out in the summer.
Yeah, Top Gun, and, even this summer, which I haven't seen yet, but
Exactly, all the Marvel movies, like all
Marvel
the biggest,
movies, yeah, right,
all
sure.
the biggest movies. I will say for me, when I think of Jaws, I just think iconic. I think of the poster. I think of the score. The dun 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 dun. Dun. I think of the fin in the water. The you're gonna need a bigger boat. Like it's all just so
Yeah.
iconic and it's so memorable. And I think for this to be kind of the original blockbuster, it's such a cinematic benchmark. I think in the film landscape. There's kind of everything before this and everything after this. I mean, you mentioned The Godfather before. I feel like The Godfather would have been the event movie of that time of, here's the biggest movie with the biggest cast and everyone's going to see this movie and it's the highest grossing movie and it wins all the awards and it's a movie everyone's talking about. And then Jaws kind of redefines that. Here's the popcorn entertainment that is now going to launch a whole new sort of genre of movies.
Yeah. When did Star Wars come out? I'm trying to remember this. Was that in the summer? The original Star Wars.
Yeah, May 25th, 1977.
Yeah. So that was. I remember seeing that in the summer on another trip when I was in the United States.
But that only proves the point, though, that Jaws initiated all this of like the summer.
Right. That's true. This was probably in the wake of Jaws.
Then,
Sure.
then you're getting a Memorial Day release date. And I will say that's what's too I think so amazing is that obviously you could make the case that Jaws was a huge kind of gamble, if you will, with the amount of promotion and marketing and just the cost of the movie and all this. And obviously it clearly paid off. It was a huge success. But the blockbuster takes off immediately. I mean, the very next year, 76, we get Rocky. The year after that, we get Star Wars. The year after that, we get Superman the movie. And then once you're in the 80s, you have all of Spielberg's hits like Raiders, E.T., Close Encounters. So like this isn't a gradual build. Like it
No.
takes off immediately.
When did the first Superman come out?
Well, I know it was 1978. I can look up the year.
Yeah, I think that was not. I don't remember that being the summer, but
But still,
But that was
I'm saying a blockbuster.
it was a huge block. No, it was definitely a blockbuster, absolutely. And inaugurated the whole comic book thing.
So that was a holiday release. That came out December 15th, 1978.
Okay. Yeah.
But the point just being is that like the blockbusters are now a mainstay.
Right. Well, what makes I think one reason why Jaws does so well is it draws on so many classic motifs. I mean, the idea of a young virginal woman being sacrificed to a sea monster is a recurring theme in Greek mythology. So the opening is whether or not you ever studied Greek mythology, it conjures up this very formidable image of the virgin being sacrificed to the sea monster, and that's Hesione, who is saved by Hercules, and Andromeda, who's saved by Perseus, and Psyche, who finally gets saved by Cupid. I mean, it's a recurring theme. So one reason why these things have lasted for thousands of years is they strike a chord, which may be positive or negative. You can talk about abuse of women and misogyny and so forth, but that opening certainly fits the that classic Greek pattern, and I think that's intentional. I mean, if George Lucas is sitting there talking to Joseph Campbell at Columbia University, I got to think that Spielberg was not far behind.
Oh, not at all. Especially because they were already contemporaries and friends. And
Right.
obviously, I know a movie you've talked about once or twice, Hound of the Baskervilles. This is the same idea, but taking the monster and instead of the moors, you're now in the ocean.
Yeah, I sort of joke. I said, yeah, Jaws is the Hound of the Baskervilles on the beach.
What's funny too is apparently the pitch for Alien a couple years later was Alien is Jaws in space. So it just shows how the tradition continues.
Keeps going on and on. Yeah, right. And what fits with the Hound of the Baskervilles is the moor is frightening, but it's also fascinating. People are attracted to it. I think that's an important part. In the classic Basil Rathbone film, Sir Henry Baskerville comes out the first morning and says, "So that's our famous moor." He wants to go out and explore it. Well, that can be kind of dangerous. But it's the same thing with the ocean. It's it's frightening, and you have to respect it, but it's also enticing and encouraging. And then the idea that there is some kind of monstrous beast out there that can be tracking you. And again, the important thing, picking up from the Hound of the Baskervilles, is the beast knows where you are, but you don't know where it is, right? Because the beast is being guided by scent, and the humans are not, or the human victim is not. And again, that's all right there in Jaws. Also, I think Jaws brings back memories of King Kong. I think we have to say that too. That's archetypal. That you're going into an alien territory to get a monster that's much bigger than the monster should be. It's if it's not supernatural, but it's at least supra-natural. It's beyond the natural scope. That line, you're going to need a bigger boat. Yeah, this is no ordinary shark. In the same way, Kong is no ordinary gorilla.
And even going off like literary sort of influences, couldn't you also have like Moby Dick as an influence?
Sure. Yeah.
Again, going out to sea, and all these stories are very much they're man versus nature.
I'm sorry. It's also the idea that the shark it's a great white. Well, Moby Dick is a white whale.
Exactly. But again, as you said, they're very extraordinary in size and not very.
Yeah, they're not typical. They're not standard.
Right. But also, again, whether it's like the moors or the ocean, the whole point too is that like this is the monster's territory. Like we are out of our element, quite literally.
Right.
So once we enter their world, they have the advantage over us immediately.
And you can extend that to the whole Transylvania thing of Dracula. You're going into an alien territory, and if you're not careful, you suffer accordingly. So there's a archetypal fear, based in that. It's and I think the scenes. Well, I think it relates to King Kong. You got to go back and look at him. When King Kong breaks loose in New York City initially, you have a shot, and it's more like at the feet of the people who are running, desperately trying to get away, and it's more you see their feet than you do any other part of their body. And there's that scene in Jaws where they're calling everybody in, which is very similar. You see maybe more than their feet, but this idea of people rushing, panic, trying to get away. Again, I think it conjures that whole thing up again.
Absolutely, and I think too, kind of going off of like you're mentioning, like other stories like Transylvania stuff. I think what's so different about this is that like whether it's Transylvania or even like the Moors, like these are such like exotic, such like otherworldly locations. Like it's so far removed from our own environment that. But this is Amityville Island. This is a summer vacation spot. Like, this should be a familiar place, a place of literally summer vacation. And now you're injecting this dose of terror into it, and it makes it now a more horrifying experience.
Yeah, no, it's that it takes place in bright sunlight. I think we've said this, not the misty moors. It's an accepting kind of environment. You're on the beach. You should be enjoying yourself. 4th of July.
It's familiar too. It's familiar.
Anyone
that's been on vacation.
It's not new to people.
Exactly. And also for this to be kind of like loosely based on like the Jersey Shore attacks of 1916, like this is a very familiar kind of scenario. Whereas the Moors or Transylvania is so again otherworldly. It's like you're kind of removed from your own world. Whereas this is going to be familiar, and that's why I'm not shocked to hear that people were scared to go in the ocean after watching this movie.
Oh yeah, they were up in Specular. They were running multiple showings of it. Keep people focused on going to the mountains and not to the ocean.
Of course. When I love to even again like comparing it to like let's say like the Hound from Hound of the Baskervilles, the shark is an entirely silent beast. It doesn't make any noise, whereas like you contrast that to the Hound, which has like the howl and footsteps running. It's so much but this is a silent, deadly killer. And I love the line by Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, how like he says like this thing is a killing machine. This thing swims, it eats, It makes new babies, and that's just what it does. Like this is not something you can reason with. This is not something you can negotiate with. Like this is a killing machine, and we are in its turf. And like it's such a perfect just premise of yeah, people want to go to the beach. You have the crazy mayor who wants to keep the beach open for 4th of July, but you have a shark literally attacking people in the shores.
Yeah. No,
And
very definitely.
and also, I say obviously the other cast we have Roy Schneider, we have Robert Shaw. I mean, I think the whole kind of the early scenes. There's so many iconic scenes. Like I said, like we talked about the opening scene with the girl, the scene when Brody's on the beach and kind of like is waiting for the shark to sort of appear, and it's everyone else is just sort of having fun. And these kind of like fake out moments where people scream, but they're just having fun. And then as soon as we see the boy who's on like the yellow raft, if you will, as soon as it turns over and we see the blood, it just hits you right then and there. And like,
Yeah.
that scene is, I think, just perfect suspense. And then when the mom is kind of like coming out like shouting
Oh
to her
yeah.
son,
Oh
and the thing rolls in, that to me is like M, the Peter Lorre M, where you see the ball
yeah.
roll away. This is the raft going to sea and all the red water. It's so like even when you know it's coming, it still gets you.
Is that the sequence where you see the actual severed leg floating
That's
down
later
into
on.
the?
That's when the
It's
boys
later
are,
on.
are in the pond. And that's the moment where, as a kid, I always had to run out of the room when I saw the severed leg go to the bottom of the water. But that's when we kind of see the monster really attack. And yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where, again, for the mechanical shark to not work so well, the way they actually use it throughout the movie is so much more effective.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, it's a cliche to keep saying, the monster never looks completely real. You have to accept a a certain measure of disbelief to appreciate it. As good as whether it's King Kong or Frankenstein's monster or the Hound of the Baskervilles or whatever, they never really look the way that you would imagine to be in this total mythical sense. But there hopefully you have enough to draw on to get the overall impression.
But also that also just adds to the idea that less is more. The less you see, the
Right.
better.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
But also, again, you made a good point too, where again, for this to be again like the first blockbuster and have all this anticipation, like the movie is good. If the movie wasn't good, I don't know where we'd be kind of after that. Like,
Right.
again, it
Yeah.
wasn't this, and then again to follow this up with again like Rocky and Star Wars, like these are just one really good movie after another. So like the blockbuster really takes off fast, and obviously studios are seeing dollar signs quite literally, but like for there to be this level of quality in the movies is what really shapes this whole idea.
Right. I mean, when you consider all the monster movies of the 50s and 60s, uh, they could easily be uh, very kind of campy, fun, but silly. And that whether
Sure.
it's, I mean, even serious ones like them are the, but this really captures it in a global. I mean, there are, I say, good antecedent examples, but this one, uh, the idea that you're in this kind of specific terrain, and I think the ocean is threatening. The ocean is fascinating. Okay, the ocean is not the same as the moors or the mountains of Transylvania or whatever, but the ocean is disturbing, and you have to respect it.
And it's so vast too. I mean, it goes beyond the eye can see. But I think what works so effectively in this movie is like there's so many scenes of just like this sort of calm, gentle rush of like the waves crashing, like this very calm, kind of soothing sound that again in a normal scenario is very pleasant and very inviting. But then once you juxtapose that with all these attacks and this killing, it makes it all the more frightening.
Yeah, you think of uh, the Ursula, the sea witch in The Little Mermaid.
Sure.
She's very much of a monstrous figure, and there you have the ambivalent kind of characters of the ocean, being both positive and negative.
Do you think there's something too, and maybe I'm reading a little too much into this, but I know we had an episode a little while back talking about like 70s horror films and kind of like where the the sort of climate was with our country and kind of like where how the movies kind of reflected that. I've noticed that I feel like in so many of the kind of 70s horror films, really the 70s like American films, like whether it's this or even like Halloween or even like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, again it's redirecting the sort of again Transylvanias or the Moors to these more kind of like small town America. So like
Yeah.
it's in Haddonfield, a very suburban small town. Texas Chainsaw, more rural part. It's very familiar. And again, this obviously is like the sort of the beach, the island, but like very small town America that again should be familiar and comforting, but now have this terror to them that makes them more dangerous and more menacing.
Yeah, you think of like the old Saturday Evening Post, that Norman Rockwell kind of pictures of families going on vacation, so forth. And yeah, that's the dominant image, and that's not what's going on here at all. Right. The other thing too is you see the hubris, which is the extreme pride of the mayor, who's only interested in the amount of money they're going to make on the 4th of July, never mind the human lives. And that again is a great self-destructive. I mean, we see that in a way that you're not used to in a genre movie, a deep emotional thing, where the mother of the little boy who dies comes in and she slaps him. I mean, that's a serious emotional encounter that you don't often get in so-called monster movies.
And it's only after the mayor's own son comes under attack that he starts to take it seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you can
Sure.
apply this to real world scenarios, but we won't go there now. But then also I love too the whole kind of second half of the movie when it's Roy Schneider and Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw going out to kind of lure the shark away and try to take it out, and the story becomes very scaled back to just be about the three of them, and you have that very famous monologue by Quint about seeing the sharks in the water and when he's in Indianapolis, kind of like how they have these great black eyes like devil's eyes, and you really get that. It really gets to the heart of the theme of this movie about kind of man's kind of inability to sort of not just control nature but understand nature, and how it's kind of like this everlasting conflict, if you will. I just love how kind of scaled back it is, especially when you consider so many blockbusters today where the third act is when things kind of ramp up, when they get a lot bigger and there's a lot more happening and they become kind of more complicated to the point where they almost kind of like crumble under their own weight. I like this is more scaled back and is more intimate about like just the men versus the shark.
Yeah. It's and again, that's an archetypal thing. That the lone hero or heroes going against the monster. I mean, the probably the oldest piece of literature we have in Western history is the Babylonian creation, where you've got this monster of the sea, who's actually a mother figure, but a very destructive one, sea monster Tiamat. And the hero has to go into the ocean to destroy her. And he uses a harpoon, basically, which is also, think of all you've got that in Jaws.
Exactly. And not only have to go in the ocean, but you have to go like deeper into the ocean. You have to go past the shore and really.
Oh yeah, right. Well, that fits this too. Oh yeah, you go into the depths.
Where again, you're only more and more out of your own element.
Right. Okay.
And what I love too just about this movie, I mean, I consider this movie, I think, a horror movie purely, but it very much is an action adventure movie, and I like how even in the sort of like the sort of structure of the movie, it starts out very suspenseful and gradually builds more and more suspense, and you have some really frightening sequences, but then when we get to the third act, it kind of becomes a little more exciting and adventurous, and you can even kind of hear that in John Williams' score. And I feel like, again, this all just kind of starts the blueprint of what a blockbuster can be.
Yeah, I guess so. Right. but it builds and builds there. I think I do think it is drawing on what was going on, and movies were on the verge of this, and I think Spielberg moved them over the line.
Absolutely, and again, this is only just the beginning of then his whole kind of career of making blockbusters, from Indiana Jones to Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
War of the Worlds. Like he sets the template, but like the way he really,
and of course all the Star Wars movies, right?
Sure, but like the way he really kind of like sets the template and really pioneers this is really rewarding and impressive. And I gotta say, watching this movie again this past Labor Day, which I've seen it amount of times, it still holds up. It's still such a fun watch.
I agree.
Okay, well that I think kind of mostly wraps things up. Do you have any kind of like final remarks about Jaws? I mean, I think we're both
Well,
pretty,
I think
pretty positive on it.
it just draws heavily on a whole range of motifs and symbols, and that's one reason why it's so effective.
Yes, you're right. It draws in so many ideas, and it's so kind of timeless because of that. And that's why again I think it's such a benchmark movie, because it's drawing on all these influences, but at the same time sort of revolutionizing all these new ways of telling these stories.
Yeah, it's coming up on a 50th anniversary.
Exactly, and yeah, I mean I was counting the box office for the original run, but it's obviously had re-releases and redistributions, and obviously the home releases. I'm sure there'll be probably another big thing to come when we get to the 50th in a couple of years. But yeah, I mean, if you ever get the chance to see this on the big screen, I say do it, because it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I can remember just going to see it when it first came out, and it blew me away.
I
loved
imagine.
it.
Only imagine. Okay, well, I think that's wraps everything up for today's episode of 10 Times the Terror. Again, I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And get out of the water, shark! See you guys next time.
Right.
Thank you for listening to
It's 10 Times the Terror,
the podcast.
One of my favorite films ever. Let's do that one again. Thank you for listening to 10 Times the Terror. This podcast would not be possible without listeners like you. You can find out more about our podcast by visiting our website, 10timestheterror.com. That's 10xtheterror.com.